Hello, welcome to EPG Pathshala. Today I am going to present before you the module Women and Video Games. Friends, video games is still in its nascent stage, in infancy, and its history is not very old, just a few decades ago. There have been many fast changes in technology, in various digital communications regarding video games. What constitutes a video game? What are the nitties, gritties of video games? Well, we won't get into that detail, the technical detail of video games. So, to broadly define video games, it is something which creates a human interface with the machine, with the computers. This whole module will deal firstly with the evolution of video games and its new media status. The other sections of this module will deal with the gender issues like the representation of females into the video games, their status in the industry as an audience, how many female take part in playing or participate in video games, and how a female character is portrayed in the video games. Now we will proceed with the history of video games. The story of the development of video games is as interesting as some of the most popular video games themselves are. Though a sweeping historical account of their evolution is beyond the scope and requirement of this module, a brief account is necessary to have a better perspective for the issues discussed. Video games began their journey in the post-war years in the science laboratories of leading academic institutions in Europe and America, like the Cambridge University and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The early games were in the form of simple simulations on analog machines that were based on the technology development during the Second World War. Not surprisingly, the credit for designing arguably the first interactive video game, Tennis for Two 1958, goes to William Alfred Higginbotham, American physicist who also helped build the first atomic bomb. None of these early video games were sold to the public because of their huge sizes and high cost. It was not before the 1970s that video games started to be produced commercially and attained a popular status in the form of what were called arcade games. From amusement arcades and other public places, the video game entered into the homes of people in 1972 as Odyssey, the first commercial home game console. By the late 1970s, several companies like Magnavox, Atari, Coleco, and had ventured into the US video game market and launched gaming consoles one after the other. By early 1980s, the American market was flooded with home gaming consoles. In 1981, Japanese company Nintendo released the game Donkey Kong that eventually evolved into the iconic arcade game Mario Bros. It was one of the earliest games to have a storyline. The saturation of the video games market led the market to crash in 1983. Atari and other gaming companies suffered huge loss. The slump prevailed for almost 2 years before Nintendo made waves in UK and US with its Nintendo Entertainment System (NES) that was launched in 1985. Gaming consoles based on optical drives entered the markets in 1995. With the internet becoming popular and cheaper towards the end of the millennium, companies started shipping gaming systems with inbuilt modems. The first console-based massive multiplayer online games was released in the year 2000. In terms of superior graphics and immersive game-playing experience, video games had come a long way from their pixelated past. Now the question arises, why study video games? Why is the need for video games? In the previous section, we learned that video games had already established themselves as part of the popular culture in the 1980s. Ever since, scholars have tried to understand video games variously as extension of traditional games or even of toys, which are understood to be cultural artifacts that represent and shape popular consciousness. Further, due to the fact that video games incorporated myriad technologies during the course of its development, its historic study often overlaps with the studies of films, televisions, computers, graphic design, and human-machine interaction. In Before It's Too Late, a digital game preservation white paper published in 2009 in the American Journal of Play, Devin Monens contends that video games are a significant part of the contemporary culture. As part of our culture, they are a part of what makes us humane, and by learning from them, we can better understand ourselves. He further goes on to describe how video games were significant as history, property, products of design process, an art form, and a source of joy. What were the most important video games? Recognizing the cultural and historical significance of video games, a consortium made up of the Stanford University, the University of Maryland, and the University of Illinois submitted a proposal to the United States Library of Congress in 2006 for preserving and studying video games as cultural artifacts. Subsequently, a committee consisting of Henry Lowood, curator of the History of Science and Technology collections at Stanford University, and 3 other members announced a game canon, a list of 10 video games that they considered to be the most important of all time. First one was Space War, year 1962. What was its importance? First, it was the first multiplayer competitive game and the first action game. Second one was Star Raiders in 1979. It established many of the conventions of the first-person space simulator genre. Third was Jork, 1980, introduced adventure game. Fourth was Tetris, 1985. It influenced generations of puzzle games. Fifth, SimCity was launched in 1989. It helped establish the genre known as God games. Sixth was Super Mario Bros. 3, 1990 was its launch year, and its specialty was non-linear play. Seventh one was Civilization 1/2. It was launched in 1991. It was turn-based strategy game. Eighth was Doom, launched in 1993. It popularized and highly influenced the first-person shooter games genre, pioneered 3D game worlds and networked multiplayer. Ninth was Warcraft series. It began in 1994 and it introduced real-time strategy overlaid on a narrative. And the 10th was A Sensible World of Soccer. It was launched in the year 1994 and it inspired the genre of a sports game. However, with its strands attached to the traditional forms of entertainment and media, video games also inherited some of their long criticized aspects. The video games continued the replication of racial and gender stereotypes as other forms of media had been doing. Again, as with the development of any new form of media, there has been a section of the public who see video games as inherently evil, having tremendously bad impact on its users. Books and articles based on studies about the impact of video games had started appearing as early as the first half of the 1980s. In order to understand video games, academicians have predominantly taken the conventional approach of analyzing storytelling devices like in the games of dramas and narratives. More recently, an emerging school of video game theorists have argued that the nature and structure of video games is radically different from earlier objects of study, like books, magazines, newspapers, drama, films, or television. This makes existing approaches, most arguably the above-mentioned storytelling model or narratology, unsuitable to explain everything that constitutes the video game and the playing experience. This school of thought that calls for a novel approach treating games more as an abstract rule-based system than as narratives have come to be known as ludology. Ludology can be defined as a discipline that studies games in general and video games in particular. Its proponents, ludologists, while not rejecting the narrative aspect of video games, claim that unlike drama and stories, as in the short stories and novels, video games are not held together by a narrative structure. As a discipline is still in its infancy, its proponents are still working to develop a domain and answer questions like how to study video games. Ludology does not disdain this dimension of video games. The difference of video games from other traditional forms of media stems from the fact that video games are not just based on narrative and representation, but on an alternative semiotical structure known as simulation. Thus, as Frasca 2003 puts it, traditional media are representational, not simulational, and games are just a particular way of structuring simulation, just like narrative is a form of structuring representation. Besides being an interactive medium, video games allows the players not only to see events but to actually choose to actively participate in the events. As such, representation and treatment of any character in general and female characters in particular takes on a whole new meaning. The players no longer remain the spectator of objectification of female characters and the consequential violence against them, but are given the freedom to perform dehumanizing acts that are often incentivized in many popular games. In the light of the immersive and interactive nature of video games, it is pertinent to study their role in dehumanizing women and perpetuating the dominance of heterosexual male. Video games as new media. As a medium of the mass consumption that emerged in the 70s, video games as we know today is still in its infancy. Starting with the entertainment as their sole function, video games have increasingly been used to serve several diverse functions owing to its versatility, inclusivity, and customizability. As form of new media, video games are finding application in political and social activism, scientific experiments, medical applications, marketing, education, and military training, among others. With online streaming of video gameplay, competitions attracting millions of viewers, both male and females, big corporations not linked directly to the industry have also started taking interest in the popularization of these events, recognizing it as a significant online media force. Over the last couple of years, the exclusive place once enjoyed by dedicated gaming consoles have been challenged as young gamers increasingly opt for smartphones and tablets as their preferred gaming platform. These mediums come with the added perk of large number of freely available games. Women in video game industry. We have already seen that video games development took a leap in the 1980s with the arcade culture and then with the onset of human home computers. The early creators of the games hailed from the traditionally male-dominated areas of computer science and engineering. This in part explained the dearth of women in these fields of study. To this date, reports by several industry bodies have found out the percentage of women in the industry is very small. Their presence at positions of power is more dismal. Their recruiters often blame it on the low and declining number of women taking up engineering and computer science courses. Women have spoken about the presence of glass ceiling in the industry as in the most other areas. It is also observed that majority of women in the industry are employed in the public relations and marketing rather than the design and development where the actual content generation takes place. As the fastest growing consumer segment of video games, women constitute close to 50% of the total number of gamers in major markets including the UK and the USA. This scenario has brought in a need for gaming companies to think afresh about the content of video games. This includes fair representation of females in the games. In order to be just to the need, companies realize the need to bring a female viewpoint into the content. Recruiting more female developers is considered to be one measure in this direction. Interesting fact, Danielle Bunten-Berry was one of the rare female game designers who worked in the initial days of the gaming industry. The visionary creator who designed the multiplayer game Mule in 1983 for gaming company Electronic Arts had declared back that multiplayer games were the future of gaming. 20 years later, it was for all to see the rise to popularity of multiplayer games. Gamergate was an online movement that started in August 2014, ostensibly against corrupt practices in video games journalism. The online campaign soon took sexist and even misogynistic turn, with many of its supporters starting to harass and threaten women in the video game industry and upfront critics talking about sexism in video games. The supporters accused video game journalists of cronyism that included receiving favors in lieu of writing favorable reviews for developers. They held the feminist critics responsible for doing harm to the gaming industry and the gamers by spreading lies. Within few days of starting, feminist gamers, developers and politics and critics of games started getting hate mails and death and assault threats. Personal details of the targets were shared online. Some were forced to vacate their house and go into the hiding. However, some supporters of the movement distanced themselves from the misogynistic activities and maintained that the campaign attempted to bring about a change in video game journalism. A number of commentators have since then analyzed the phenomena as the reflection of prevalent sexism in the gaming industry as well as the gamers. Representation of women in video games. In agreement with the Butler's thesis in Gender Trouble 1990 about gender representation in media, video games, like any other visual media, acts as a cultural site that construct and reinforce traditionally established and socially prescribed gender norms and behavior. Right from the formative days of the video games in the 70s, gaming companies have been accused of catering almost exclusively to the stereotypical heterosexual male gamer. This is reflected in the content as well as the marketing campaigns that target only to the male gamers. Even in the games targeted to the female players, gaming companies base their representation and gender roles based on stereotypical notions of femininity. Mattel's Barbie games are a good example of this approach. Content laden with both subtle and overt sexism have existed in video games ever since the nascent years. To this day, most of the top-selling video games are found to carry mature content, intense violence, sexual imagery, and degrading depiction of women. Very few of the top-selling video games features females as the main character, and more often than not, female characters are hypersexualized. As you would remember from the history of video games sections of this module, Nintendo's 1981 release, Donkey King was the first game with a storyline. The reason we evoke the game in this section again is that besides being the earliest video game to have a storyline, it also pioneered the use of the classic sexist damsel in distress theme or trope. Since then, the trope has been used in innumerable video games of almost every genre. Feminist media critic Anita Sarkeesian, in one of the videos from her multi-part video series exploring the roles and representation of women in video games, defines the damsel in distress trope thus. She asserts that the trope objectified the women by portraying them as passive, disempowered victims, the distressed damsel who is reduced to a prize to be won, a treasure to be found, or a goal to be achieved. Criticism of sexism in video games is not new to the industry. In 1983, a company called Mystique released Custer's Revenge that went on to become one of the most despised games of all types for being misogynistic, pornographic, and racist at the same time. The game sparked protests by women and Native Indian organizations across America. Considering of crude, pixelated graphics, the game required the player to assume the role of General Custer, who is featured naked. He dodges arrows to get to a Native American woman who is tied naked to a pole in the desert. Women Against Pornography criticized the manufacturers for making rape a game. The then president of the New York unit of National Organization for Women, Dennis Fuke, remarked that sexist video game pushed teenage boys closer to our culture's acceptance of recreational violence against women. Feminist critics of video games often points out towards the representation of women as background decoration. As Sarkeesian puts it, this representation is a subset of largely insignificant non-playable female characters whose sexuality or victimhood is exploited as a way to infuse edgy, gritty, or racy flavoring in game worlds. These sexually objectified female bodies are designed to function as environmental texture while titillating presumed straight male players. Of late, accused of catering only to predominantly male gamers, game developing companies have started offering options for the players to customize the protagonists as male or female. It is interesting to note that in academic as well industry-sponsored studies, it has been found that given the choice, a significant proportion of the male gamers often choose to play as a female character. Released in 1996, action genre game Tomb Raider broke from the traditional depiction of female characters as passive or secondary by featuring an active female heroine. The game and characterization of its protagonist, Lara Croft, had critics and academics debating over her possibly being a role model. Among the players, the game received unprecedented response from both males and females. The game and its female central character defied the typical norms of video games on several counts. In Lara Croft, the players got a strong female lead who rejects norms of femininity and breaks the patriarchal values while overcoming dangers and hurdles in masculine spaces in a genre that is typically male-dominated. In another positive departure, the storyline is devoid of any romantic subplot. The markers of the game were successful in providing the increasing number of female gamers in the 90s with a character they could identify with. However, as critics would point out, the character of Lara Croft was coded with markers that strengthened the conventional stereotyping of the female body as an eroticized object of the male gaze and the fetishistic and scopophilic pleasures which this provides for the male viewer. In an obvious bid to appeal to their primary market of male gamers, the creators of Lara Croft give her the typical sexualized female body with accentuated curves and provocative form-fitting clothes. Jade, the protagonist of the 2003 action-adventure game Beyond Good and Evil, is one of the very few relatable positive female characters in a video game that have been critically acclaimed for her realistic portrayal. Female video game players. Ever since the video games became a cultural phenomenon in the 1980s, several scholars have conducted studies to ascertain if there was any relation of gender with gaming behavior. These studies have established gender differences ranging from time spent playing video games to game preferences. It is largely held that in general, females spend less time playing video games. Consistent findings from several such studies verified the assumption is true. The situation saw little change over the course of initial decades of development of video games. The reasons for this include the embedded masculinity within the game structure as well as the male-dominated physical contexts in which games were played. Female gamers often describe their experience of playing video games as if they were trading a male-created virtual space. Analysts have found that most of the times, both male and female characters in video games cater to the fantasies of the male gamers, while in the case of male characters, it is what the male players want to be, and in the case of female characters, it is how they want the female body to be. For example, many of them showed that male played violent video games more frequently than females. The underlying reasons pointed out by these studies differ from as simply as late entry of girls into gameplay to complex psychosocial factors like negotiations between societal expectations and personal ambitions. In one of her experiments concerning gender and video gameplay, Volker Dean observed that the psychological complexities that girls undergo during gameplay. She pointed out that girls have to undergo a self-management task that is much more complex while playing. Many games that are the site for the production of contemporary masculinity because they both demand and appear to ensure performances such as heroism, killing, winning, competition, action, combined with technical skill and rationality. Some others have claimed that the reason why females play violent video games less frequently than boys is because they are more emphatic and find it difficult to justify physical violence. Now, we will discuss about the scope of video games and the summary. All the theorists, many theorists, cultural theorists, academicians, thinkers, they are quite worried about the gender gap or the gender disparity in terms of video games. Why there are less number of females participating in the video games as compared to the males. But due to the advancement of digital technology, new forms of media, a penetrable bandwidth of internet and a web of internet that is spreading throughout the world, video games that involve female characters are increasing, and also more and more females are being included as the part of the video game industry. They are acting as the programmer, the developer, and the content designer too. Video games like Let's Talk to Me, made on girls, are extremely interesting and are attracting a greater number of audience. Days are not far enough when this inequality between male and female in video games is going to disappear, and more female are going to join the video game industry. Thank you.